What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? We have some brand new information, news, and spoilers for the upcoming Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, in which case, before diving any deeper into spoiler territory or getting into any of the news or information provided, just for a fair warning, you guys have been warned that we are going to dive into spoilers and news for the upcoming movie. So if you don't want the movie ruined for you, if you don't want to know anything further than what you know as of right now, then I highly advise you guys to either skip forward in the video or simply tune off to preserve the information that you already know and not being spoiled, and this will be your only warning. Now, as many of you guys are already aware, we have the world premiere of Dragon Ball Super Broly in Japan, which took place yesterday and currently taking place right now, which means that a lot of people that went to go see the movie have put out some kind of information online as to what is to be expected in this movie when it comes to context, when it comes to quality, and when it comes to understanding what we're in for in terms of character substance and story development. Now, based off of the information provided by DBS Chronicles on Twitter, the following events are what's scheduled to happen in the movie. In case you're wondering about Bardock versus Frieza, we are going to see Bardock rebelling against Frieza very similarly to what we saw in Dragon Ball Minus and during the original events of Dragon Ball Z, so that hasn't changed in and of itself entirely, but Frieza is going to play a pivotal role in being the executioner behind the idea of Planet Vegeta having to be destroyed in this movie. Now, according to Ken Zyro on Twitter, it looks like the movie does start off in the past, and Frieza actually goes around using his scouter in detecting anybody out there who has a power level above 2000 and begins to kill them off. Of course, due to the fear of the Saiyans having to one day rise above him, he ends up killing anybody else there who is left with a power above 2000, and it looks like the fight engagement between Bardock and Frieza is going to have Bardock negate the death ball momentarily, but not by much. So it is in fact a bit different, but it looks like it's due to Bardock's willpower and some type of control that leads him to struggle against the death ball before, of course, having to succumb to the power and then eventually having to be killed off, just as we saw in the original material. Now, another huge tidbit that we end up seeing in the movie is Hit, Jiren, Brienne, and all of the previous Tournament of Power warriors, because of Goku having to speak to Whis about the strongest warriors or meeting stronger warriors as we saw during the events of the TOP. So it makes sense in having to see these characters momentarily in terms of flashbacks or any sort of cameo be made, not in the flesh, but in the form of brief flashbacks and having to reminisce on such powerful entities as we saw in the previous arc having to follow with this one. So it does make sense, and no, Hit and Jiren and Brienne and these characters aren't going to be in this movie physically, but more or less a callback to all of the strong warriors that Goku has faced in Dragon Ball Super leading up until this very point in time. Now, accordingly enough, it also seems like Broly was raised and grew up on Planet Bampa after having to leave Planet Vegeta, and he hasn't matured enough to articulate better because of his experience having to be on this planet, continuously having to fight, continuously having to train, in which later on they end up being discovered by Frieza as the ship lands on the current planet that they are on. And the first two characters that come across Broly in having to recruit him and speak to him are Lemmo and Shile, which eventually at some point Broly and Paragus do have a momentary discussion with Frieza, and Frieza apparently recognizes and remembers Paragus and knows that since Paragus does not like the Saiyans, and apparently enough he does have a hatred for King Vegeta, being that Frieza is a mass manipulator, he takes Broly and takes Frieza exactly to where Vegeta is currently on Earth, and that's where the fight begins. Now, Goku and Vegeta on Earth are assisting Bulma in having to find the Dragon Balls because the narrative here is basically about the Dragon Balls. We know that there's an Arctic tundra that seemingly enough has one of the Dragon Balls located, so Goku and Vegeta go off to find it there, and that's where they come across Broly and Paragus once the ship does end up landing there, and that's when the fight truly begins. And the fight does begin with Vegeta having to fight Broly, and apparently enough, Broly, just like we saw with Kale in Dragon Ball Super, does not know how to go Super Saiyan. Now that's going to be a huge contributing factor in this movie because a base standard Broly is fighting and being comparable enough to a Super Saiyan God Vegeta in the opening acts of this movie. So once Vegeta engages with Broly, Vegeta isn't truly going all out from the start, but he is using Super Saiyan God, just as we saw in the trailer, and that in and of itself is going up against a standard regular Broly. Now, the main key behind Broly's power in this movie is during the course of battle itself, because even though he starts off remotely weak, the more he ends up fighting Vegeta, the stronger he's becoming. Now, normally, it's a lot of the Saiyans that previously have Zenkai boost after having to recover from near-death experiences that basically come back stronger. Broly is the total opposite. It looks like Broly continuously grows stronger and adapts way more than anybody else we've ever seen before, and that's an end result of his genetics. That's just how he is as an individual. And even though Vegeta is kicking his butt in the beginning, Broly adapts, Broly gets stronger, and that's when we get to see the evolution of Broly in this movie as the fight continues. So yes, a standard base Broly, apparently enough, can handle Super Saiyan God, so that's extremely wacky in and of itself. Now, when going back and referencing that Broly does not know how to go Super Saiyan, well, accordingly enough, Frieza remembers the first time he fought Goku in Dragon Ball Z and what it took for Goku to become a Super Saiyan. He understood that at this point, he needed to trigger Broly in such a way that caused him, or causes him, to go and transform further in order to have a better chance against Goku and Vegeta. And what he ends up doing is Frieza kills Paragus. Frieza kills Paragus to trigger Broly in becoming a Super Saiyan, and that's exactly what happens. And it's because of this initial rage and this power and this fuel that he has after seeing this before his eyes that further causes Broly to fight against Goku and Vegeta in his Super Saiyan state and completely decimate Super Saiyan Blue to the point where Goku and Vegeta are completely rendered incapacitated when they hit the floor. Now, Frieza does in fact have a wish, and Frieza's wish in this movie isn't necessarily to be immortal, but a running gag in him wanting to be taller. Yes, that is Frieza's wish in this movie. Frieza's wish is to be 5 centimeters taller, and Bulma's wish is to in fact be younger. Now, when referencing Frieza, a lot of people might be wondering, what is the fate of Frieza in this movie? Well, in fact, Gogeta is the person that apparently saves Frieza from Broly in this movie. So yes, I said Gogeta saves Frieza in this movie from Broly. Now, speaking of Gogeta, we already knew this months ahead that Gogeta is going to be in the movie. However, it's not just one iteration of Gogeta, but in fact 4 different versions of Gogeta that we're going to see in this movie. Now, this you can take with a grain of salt, because there are some people saying that there's only one version of Gogeta while others are saying it's 4. Nonetheless, Gogeta is in the movie, and based off of DBS Chronicles on Twitter, it seems as if Gogeta is going to have a base form, Super Saiyan form, Super Saiyan God form, and Super Saiyan Blue form. But if those end up not being true, then indefinitely Gogeta is going to have Super Saiyan Blue and nothing more. So with that being said, in this movie, at some given point during the fight with Broly, it looks like Gogeta does save Frieza from Broly having to kill him at some given point towards the end of the film, and I'm only guessing that it's because during this fight it is understood that Frieza is definitely necessary to progress their plans later on, especially with what happens during the end. So if we do in fact end up seeing a base Gogeta, Super Saiyan Gogeta, and Super Saiyan God Gogeta, then it is in fact a gift, being that we will see at some given point Broly having to fight these versions of Gogeta in this movie. But prior to Gogeta actually being a thing, Veku, like we stated before, is going to be a huge factor in this movie. And Veku is the basic gag form of Gogeta that we saw in Fusion Reborn, and he's going to have the exact same role that we saw during the Fusion Reborn movie in this movie coming up. Now, Piccolo, a lot of people may be wondering, Piccolo is simply in the movie to play a guide in helping Vegeta learn fusion with Goku. So it's a very similar concept in which we saw happen in Dragon Ball Z when Goku used Piccolo to teach Goten and Trunks the fusion. So Piccolo's role in this movie is is to indefinitely help Vegeta learn fusion. So any involvement with Piccolo having to go up against Broly, or any other involvement of having Gohan, Android 17, Android 18, Krillin, Tien, or any of the other previous Tournament of Power Warriors be in this film is a non-factor, because the only person that's going to be involved in helping Goku and Vegeta is going to be Piccolo. Now, speaking of helping Goku and Vegeta, Whis is going to be the sole factor in keeping Broly at bay while Goku and Vegeta attempt to fuse, in which is going to result in Veku and then later on Gogeta. So Whis versus Broly is in fact a thing, but it's not necessarily Broly having to physically touch Whis, but more or less playing a better Piccon in comparison to what we saw in Fusion Reborn. And that's nothing new, because we already knew that we are going to see Whis involved with Broly at some given point. However, it seems as if Broly is going to turn Super Saiyan full power after Gogeta appears. So I'm only guessing that it's because of Broly's rage that causes him to tap into this power once he meets and fights against Gogeta. Now, it's also stated in this movie that Gogeta and Broly are going to have the final fight in this film, and because of that, their fight alone is in fact going to take place in a different dimension. Now, Broly, in fact, by the very end, and this is the ending spoiler, gets teleported back to the place where he grew up. And the one person to go to him and feed him and give him other things at the very end is Goku. So Broly in the end gets teleported back to his homeworld after being saved from Gogeta, because the fight between Goku and Vegeta having to merge into one to fight Broly does result in apparently Gogeta having to have the clear upper hand against Broly. But by the end, it looks like it's according to Shile that comes in, steps in, saves Broly, teleports him back, and Goku ends up going to him, feeding him, and taking care of him, which goes outside of Goku's character, but that's what he goes out to do. He goes out to help Broly, and Bulma actually helps Goku in doing this, as she stores everything in capsules, and she sends Goku off on his merry little way to not only find Broly, but helping him out as well. Now, in terms of the greater size of Broly's power, accordingly enough, it looks like Broly is in fact much more powerful and stronger than Lord Beerus. This in fact is confirmed in the movie by the main protagonist Goku. So accordingly enough, it looks like Broly is going to be stronger and going to be a stronger factor than Beerus, and this looks to be confirmed by Goku in the film at some given point as they're either fighting or after the battle ends, just to further that narrative. So just in case you're wondering, Broly does survive, but it's not based off of his own survival instincts to win, but more or less he is saved and brought back to his own planet. Now, Vegeta and Broly are the same age in this movie, but apparently enough, Goku is younger, so not entirely sure how you guys feel about this, but it looks like Vegeta and Broly's age factor is more or less similar in this film, but Paragus is more or less trying to not only control Broly's power, but also trying to exploit him further in his problems and the beef that he originally had with King Vegeta dating back 40 years ago. So it's basically a father versus father beef, and this is spilled out in the sons having to fight, and apparently enough, it looks like Vegeta is going to be the first person that Broly fights in this movie, which is a good thing, because not a lot of people have really expected for Broly to go after Vegeta first, but being that the entire story stems from the Saiyans and King Vegeta, it only makes sense to do so and see Vegeta having to fight Broly first. So these are spoilers, and these are leaks that just came out following the premiere, and if anyone out there has been wondering about what happens to, the Saiyans, they're keeping the formulaic story the same as we've seen in Dragon Ball Z. The wish that Frieza has is apparently different. It's a running gag for him to be taller. Bulma wants to be younger. Broly is in fact confirmed to be stronger than Beerus, or stronger than Beerus by the main protagonist. So again, that goes back to the earlier scans of the year in which we saw how a lot of people were factoring in the idea of someone being stronger than Beerus, and it looks like Broly is going to be that that guy. Now, in terms of what happens after the credits, in terms of them alluding to a new series, that of course has not been confirmed yet, but if Broly ends up surviving, then you can only imagine that down the road they're going to have further plans in initiating Broly and having him involved further in upcoming movies, or potentially the return of Dragon Ball if that does happen. We understand that now this is the main narrative, and the only thing that I'm concerned for is seeing if Gogeta is going to have these different forms and levels to him, because if Gogeta ends up displaying a higher level of Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan God, then it's going to be a spectacle, and on top of everything else, it looks like the fight between Broly and Gogeta is going to be so intense that it spills on over into a different landscape, which is essentially good because it looks like it's not just going to be planet Earth that they're going to be taking all of their rage out on and seeing what happens with them, but so far this is what we know, and we also understand that Broly is gradually going to get stronger and stronger and stronger in this movie based off of him having to be introduced from the beginning, and it looks like in some way, shape, or form Broly's backstory does come from what happened on planet Bampa, him having to be abandoned, him having to basically go out there and fight for every little thing he had in adapting and getting stronger. I disagree with the concept of him having to be stronger than Beerus, but we're going to have to wait further to see what happens, and it's really interesting to see how, out of all people, Gogeta saves Frieza from inevitable death by the hands of Broly, which is interesting because this is going to be the first time that Frieza encounters a fusion between Goku and Vegeta, and then having to be saved by them in having to combat a common enemy. So another tidbit to pick up on here is Gogeta does not defuse in this movie. When the fight ends, it ends with Broly having to be teleported back to his planet, and Gogeta is said to be so powerful, very, very powerful, that he's easily able to just slap Broly around effortlessly, in the fact that he doesn't have a timer, or it looks like the timer factor, the time factor of him having to be restrained, is not incorporated in this movie. However, the whole notion at the very end is Goku having to accept himself and Broly by giving him food and resources. They kind of end their beef, they become neutral or friends, and Goku finally goes off to tell Broly, my name is Goku, my name is Kakarot, and that's when the movie ends. So it's a fitting end, it's a phenomenal movie when it comes down to animation, art, CG, everything about this screams continuation, and by the end, it's only the beginning of something greater to come down the line. Big shout outs and credit to Ken Zyro on Twitter for helping provide this information openly. So again, credit to DBS Chronicles on Twitter, credit to Geekdom 101 Emperor Big D on Twitter, credit to the people that went out to see the premiere and the entire movie having to be spilt out in the open, because now we have a basic information as to what's to expect, now we have a basic information as to what exactly we're looking forward to seeing, and I for one am definitely excited. But in the end, I would like to get your thoughts in the comment section below as to how you guys potentially feel about this movie. Do you guys think that there's going to be more context after the film, which is going to be presented at Jump Festa this year, in potentially having to reveal the return of the Dragon Ball Super series, or maybe a new movie, or nothing at all? I do believe that with the execution of the way Broly's going to be portrayed, a lot more is lying on the horizon than what we see right now, and this is only going to be the beginning of what's to come in the future. Of course, we have lots more things to talk about this week with the conclusion of the Dragon Ball Super manga and plans going forward in terms of what we're expected to see in the quote Broly arc that's going to take place in the manga as well. I want to get your thoughts down below on everything having to be said. Thank you all so much for watching. Once more, if you guys are stoked, ready, hyped, and excited for this movie like myself and many others, then go on ahead and slap a like down below if you guys are new to this channel and want to be kept updated with Dragon Ball news, information, updates, and discussions. Then I highly advise you to punch that subscribe button, click the bell icon to always be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be catching you all down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
This is the Galactic Emperor of the Universe, and of course I'm here to tell you to subscribe to UnrealEntGaming and all his social media platforms. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you can be the first to know every time that he uploads a new video.
Oh, did someone say UnrealEntGaming? Oh my god!
The fuck's up, on? Put on some clothes!
Well, why don't you put on any clothes?
What What? I don't need clothes. Jesus Christ, that's huge!